This is an everyday story. A young woman has a tragic car accident. She's taken to hospital and the doctors fight for her life. But they can't do anything. They have to tell her parents, your daughter has just suffered brain death. We are very sorry. Her heart and lungs are still working, but she's dead. This makes the young woman one of the very few deceased who are suitable for organ donation. Only 1% or less of all deaths are. The doctor later asked the parents, would you donate your daughter's organs? Do you know what your daughter's wishes were? Did she want to be an organ donor? We have no idea, the parents say. So how can we make a decision now?
Very small numbers of people actually donate, and that's because very small numbers of people are able to donate. So in Queensland we have about 35 organ donors per year. There are many, many more people waiting for transplants than there are organs or tissues available. The consequences are that people die on the waiting list, waiting for an organ to become available. That's the most harsh consequence, but other than that, people's lives, because they don't receive transplants, their lives and the lives of their families and friends are greatly impacted by their continuing illness and perhaps death because they don't receive a transplant.
Queensland is 7 times the size of the UK, for instance. There are only 4 public institutions within that geographical area able to provide neurosurgical care. Most of the patients who die as a result of motor vehicle accidents do not even get to the point of accessing medical services, and therefore our potential donor population, i.e. people who reach an institution with a condition which can lead to brain death, may be exceedingly small.
When you have about 1,800 people who are waiting for transplants in Australia, last year we had just over 200 organ donors. So there's a pretty wide disparity, and that could be improved if more people gave consent.
I'm looking at the family as being, as it were, a surrogate for the patient's expressed wishes or likely wishes in such circumstances. It's not, therefore, although we're looking for assent from the family, what we're really looking for is the family to inform us what they believe their loved one would have wanted. It is fairly common that the issue of organ donation has not been discussed amongst families.
We would probably estimate that about half will give consent and half may not. Oftentimes it can be the fact that it's a huge trauma to the family. It's a very, very difficult time for the family, and if there has been no discussion during life about what that person wanted, then the family is going to err on the side of caution and probably say no. So that's why that conversation during life is so important. So if you're going to make changes in our culture about improving organ donation, then those improvements will probably come by people having that discussion during life and casually and in conversation, and then if something horrible should happen, the family will know what to do.
I think people feel very comfortable with organ donation if I talk to them in the street about it. You know, if I walked out the front of the hospital and I started asking people, what do you think of organ donation? Would you be an organ donor? 90% or more would say, I think it's a good idea, and yes, I would be an organ donor. The problem is when it comes to the crunch and the person has actually died but not discussed their wishes, that's when we run into problems, in that the person wanted to be a donor but their family didn't know, and so therefore they may say no. A lot of people don't like to think about their own death. I think that's one of the primary reasons. The other reason is that I think most Australians are very generous people, but we're very lazy people, and so we think about organ donation, we think it's a good idea, but we don't do the thing that's most important, which is to make sure we have the discussion with our family so that they are able to carry out the wishes of the person who has died. So I think it's not that we're we don't want to. It's just that we're lazy about thinking about it and actually formalising those decisions.
I think it's a difficult thing to talk about, because if you are talking about organ donation, then you're acknowledging that at some stage your loved one is going to die. And sometimes the idea that when you talk about when you talk about your own death, you're actually perpetuating the inevitable. So if I don't talk about it, it's not going to happen.
One of the things we've discovered about our Australian society, and it's the same in many modern industrialised societies, is that people do feel uncomfortable about talking about death. Particularly now, in the last 100 years, we've noticed that not too many people die at home anymore. That's taken care of by the professionals. It often happens in hospitals. I think that in general people are not exposed to it, they're not comfortable with it, it's frightening to them, it's strange to them, and so I'm not surprised that that means, therefore, that people don't feel very comfortable talking about organ donation with family and friends.
People are scared of dying. It's not something they want to think about every day of their life. It's also not knowing how other people feel about it. For example, if you wanted to donate organs yourself, you might not be sure how your family feels about it, so you might be hesitant to actually raise that issue because you're not sure how they'll react to you. I've done some focus groups with people, so a lot of people say that they use media stories as an icebreaker to raise the issue. Another strategy would be to think about, if you were faced with that question to donate another person's organs in your family, how would you feel if you didn't know what they wanted? I think a lot of people feel better about donating a family member's organs if they realise what their family member actually wants. One way you could do it would be you could register your decision and obviously receive a donor card in the mail, so you might be able to use that when you receive it to say to your parents, you know, I've received this in the mail today and these are my decisions. I still think it's really important if they talk to their families about it, because even if you do register it and you don't discuss that with your family, then they're told your decision, basically, if you're ever in that situation, and they might be shocked by it, they may not know that you wanted to do that, they may be uncomfortable with it, so it's really important to tell them as well. It's my understanding that family members are still either told the decision or asked if it's okay to go ahead with it, so it's really important if they do know what the person wants. I haven't seen every public campaign there is, but I think the campaigns for registering are great because that's one way of letting other people know your decision. But I also think there needs to be a focus on discussing it and raising practical things like how to discuss your decision, when to discuss it, a few points to start off the conversation, what to do if you encounter opposition from a family member. Those kind of things I think need to be in campaigns to help people have a start if they're uncomfortable with discussing it.
It's really about opportunities to expose people to the experience, to be able to talk about it with them. If there's no opportunity for that, then nothing's ever going to change. While people maintain this taboo about talking about death, you only need to look at the way in which we use euphemisms to talk about it. We don't talk about people dying, we don't talk about so-and-so's dead. We talk about sleeping, resting in peace, passing away, and that's really symptomatic of the problem, that we don't want to confront death, we want to keep it at arm's length. And until there's changes in that and we begin to have more of an encounter with the experience and a bit more comfortable, I don't see anything changing. Education programs in schools could be very useful in helping younger people to at least talk about death and not be so frightened of it. I used to go into schools many years ago, and I'd be asked to talk about religion and a number of issues to do with religion. And what I discovered was that the one topic that really got the students engaged was to talk about death and dying. And so I think that within schools there's certainly an opportunity to begin in a small way to change the culture.